Hello and welcome everyone. Before we begin, what's a volcano's favorite dessert? Why, lava cake, of course. Lava cake, the dessert with a delicate but delectable chocolate cake shell and a mysteriously molten core. Halloween quickly approaches, so let's take these cakes for a spin and see if we can't give them a slight spooky twist. There are a ton of recipes for lava cake on the internet, to the point that it is very overwhelming. I wanted something different though. I wanted a relatively simple recipe that didn't rely on leaving the center of the cake uncooked. Thus, my attention was drawn to the lava cake recipe from the movie Chef. The idea of using chocolate ganache instead of raw batter intrigued me. Not only does this make the cake safe for people who can't have raw eggs, but it also gives us freedom to play with the core's composition. Today's lava cakes will be bittersweet chocolate cake shells with caramelized white chocolate ganache cores. Be sure to check out my video on how to make caramelized white chocolate if you're interested. In honor of Spooky Day's impending arrival, I'll dye some of the ganache orange and decorate the tops with powdered sugar, like you see here. For today's recipe, you will need the following. For the ganache centers, 56 grams or 2 ounces of chopped white chocolate. 56 grams or 2 ounces of chopped caramelized white chocolate, though you can use all regular white chocolate instead if you prefer. 50 grams or 1/4 of a cup of whipping cream, and optionally some orange gel food coloring. For the cake shells, you will need 171 grams or 6 ounces of fairly finely chopped bittersweet or semisweet chocolate, 3/8 of a cup of melted unsalted butter, 3 eggs, 1/4 cup of light brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. I personally like to keep them separate for easier use later on. And 1/4 teaspoon salt. Optionally, you can also add 1 tablespoon of Kahlua. You're also going to need 4 baking ramekins, some room temperature butter for greasing the ramekins, and some raw sugar or coarse regular sugar, also for the ramekins. For decorating, you'll want some powdered sugar and cocoa. Some quick notes and tips. This recipe can be doubled if you want to make 8 portions instead of 4 at a time. For the ganache, you can use 112 grams of white chocolate instead of half white chocolate and half caramelized white chocolate if you do not feel like caramelizing any. However, I highly recommend trying out the caramelized version because it is absolutely delightful. For the cake, you can use either bittersweet or semi-sweet chocolate. The bittersweet pairs very well with the sweet white chocolate filling, but semi-sweet would also be delicious. However, it does have to be dark chocolate. Milk chocolate just will not work for the cake. I also highly recommend using raw sugar for coating the ramekins rather than coarse regular sugar. Not only does it add a more delightful crunch to the outside of the cake, but it doesn't melt as easily, so it prevents the cakes from getting stuck in the ramekins. Personally, for me, the hardest part of this recipe has been removing the ramekins from the cakes. The ramekins I'm using have a very high gloss to the outside of them, which makes gripping them extremely difficult, especially when they're hot. If you have a similar situation, I highly recommend practicing your removal technique on cool, empty ramekins on a table. Additionally, be sure to wipe off the outside of the ramekins to make sure they're nice and clean and free of any grease. All it takes is a little tiny bit of butter on the outside of the ramekins to make them absolutely impossible to pick up. First, we're going to start with our ganache. Bring 50 grams of cream to a boil in the microwave. This takes my microwave about 30 seconds, but yours may take more or less time, so make sure to keep an eye on it. Then mix together the chocolate in a bowl and pour in the cream. Let this sit for 1 minute, then stir together the chocolate and cream, working in circles from the middle of the bowl outwards. If you have big chunks of chocolate that just won't dissolve, pop the whole mixture in the microwave for 5 seconds and then resume stirring. I am separating my ganache into 2 parts. One will be dyed orange with 1/4 teaspoon of gel food coloring, and the other will stay brown. The orange ganache is going to go inside my jack-o'-lantern decorated cakes, and the brown will go inside my ghosts. You can also skip the food coloring entirely if you prefer. Now place your ganache into the freezer for at least 2 hours. This will let it set up nice and firm. Now for the cake. First, preheat the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Grease the inside of each ramekin heavily with room temperature butter. Then add raw sugar and roll the ramekin to get the bottom and sides completely coated with sugar crystals. The better coated the ramekin is, the less likely your cake is to stick to it. In a large bowl or a measuring cup, combine your bittersweet chocolate with warm melted butter and gently fold the mixture. If the chocolate remains unmelted, pop it into the microwave for 10 seconds and then repeat the folding. Repeat the microwaving multiple times if needed. You want to make sure that all of the chocolate is fully melted, but you don't want to overheat it. Once the chocolate is melted, set it aside. In a large mixing bowl, beat your eggs. You can do this with a whisk, but I highly recommend a hand or stand mixer. Then, as you're beating, add your brown sugar and continue to beat until the eggs are light and frothy. Once frothy, add your vanilla and optional Kahlua and your salt. Now slowly add the chocolate to the egg mixture. This is going to thicken the mixture up to an almost icing-like consistency. Once all the chocolate is added, quickly beat in the flour 1 tablespoon at a time. This is why I like having them individually measured out in advance. Scrape down the sides of the bowl and give it one last quick beat. Then we can move on to the next step. Fill each ramekin half to 2/3 full of the batter. Then take your frozen ganache and measure out 1 tablespoon. Roll the ganache into a ball and press it into the center of the batter. Be very careful not to push it to the bottom of the dish. Once each ramekin has its ganache, take the remaining batter and cover the balls. Then take a skewer or small knife and gently swirl the batter around the edges of the dish. This will help to make sure that the 2 layers fuse together and you won't end up with leaks. Just be careful not to disturb too much of the sugar. And now we bake. Pop the ramekins into the oven and set a timer for 11 minutes. Once the 11 minutes have elapsed, remove the cakes from the oven and place them on a cooling rack. Run a thin small knife around the outside edge of the ramekins to ensure the cakes are free from the sides. Place a plate over the top of the ramekins and carefully but quickly flip them over. Now for the tricky part. Lift the ramekins straight up off the cake. Once all of the cakes are out of their ramekins, we can get fancy with the powdered sugar and cocoa. I made a jack-o'-lantern stencil and a ghost stencil from some line art I found on Google. I printed it out and then transferred the design to a sacrificial cutting mat. I'm using black cocoa to color the eyes of my designs and powdered sugar for the bodies. I made some orange powdered sugar for this. Let me know in the comment section down below if you're interested in how to make colored powdered sugar at home. Personally, I think the ghosts are my favorite since they don't need any fancy colored powdered sugar, and they're also the easiest to cut out the stencil for. There we have it! Slightly spooky lava cakes. A crunchy crust of raw sugar, tender silky smooth cake, and a molten core of ganache goodness. The lava cakes are best served hot or warm, but I am told they are still pretty tasty even when they've cooled and the lava is no longer molten. Now my favorite thing about this recipe is that there aren't any special tools required. A hand or a stand mixer makes life a lot easier, but all of the beating could be done with manual beaters or a whisk if need be. There's no faffing about with double boilers, just the handy dandy microwave. Hopefully you were inspired to give these little lava cakes a go. They're a great treat any time of the year, not just Halloween. With ganache as the core, there's so many different possibilities for customizing the flavor of the cakes. If this video did inspire you and you decide to give the recipe a try, be sure to show me your results over on Twitter or Instagram. If you haven't already, be sure to bash the like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell. That way you don't miss any future episodes of Andrew's Treats and Eats. If you have any comments, suggestions, or ideas for future episodes, be sure to leave them in the comments section down below. I read every comment that's posted. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.